A blind and emotionally scarred businessman reluctantly agrees to a blind date set up by a friend. At the park, a talkative girl appears out of nowhere and brings color to his silence with her light-heartedness. Fate shows its irony when he realizes the girl's mother is the woman he had unknowingly been talking to. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Now, on with the story. Leo Anderson never imagined that Saturday afternoon in Central Park would change his life forever. Sitting on a bench near the lake, he nervously adjusted the watch on his wrist, feeling the weight of the hours through the raised markers on its face. The October sun in New York warmed his skin, but it wasn't enough to chase away the chill he felt inside. At 38, the owner of a nationwide chain of luxury hotels, Leo had everything money could buy, except the ability to see and the courage to trust again. His blindness had come at 23, the result of an accident that had also taken his father. 15 years had passed since then, and Leo had learned to navigate the world through his other senses. But what he could never completely overcome was the scar left by Megan, the woman he had loved with all the intensity of a rising young entrepreneur, and who had abandoned him as soon as the family fortune began to dwindle after the patriarch's death. She couldn't stand the idea of being with a blind man who, in her eyes, could never reclaim the lost empire. How wrong she was. Leo rebuilt everything on his own, with sharp intelligence and fierce determination. Today his name was synonymous with success in the hotel industry. But the distrust remained, an invisible scar that burned whenever someone approached him with romantic interest. He knew it was hard to tell who loved him from who loved his bank account. That's why when Brian, his best friend from college, insisted on this blind date, Leo resisted with all his might. The irony of the term wasn't lost on him. He laughed bitterly when he heard the suggestion. A blind date for a blind man. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. But Brian was persistent. He had met a woman in a coffee shop. They struck up a conversation, and she mentioned being on a dating app with little success. Brian, who always worried about his friend's loneliness, saw an opportunity. He convinced the woman to give an in-person meeting a chance, without initially revealing Leo's identity. He just said it was for a friend of his, who also used the app. The coincidence was almost impossible, but Brian believed in fate. After weeks of insistence, Leo gave in. More to shut his friend up than out of any real hope. He set the meeting in the park, a public, neutral place where he could feel safe. If it all went wrong, he would simply leave. Now sitting there waiting for a stranger who would probably look at him with either pity or financial interest, Leo regretted his decision. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees around him, producing a constant whisper he had learned to identify. Birds sang in the distance. Children played. The world carried on its frantic rhythm, oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. That's when a high, clear voice, crystalline as a bell, broke through his thoughts. "Hi, why are you wearing sunglasses? It's sunny, but not that sunny." Leo turned his head toward the voice. It was a child, probably 7 or 8 years old, judging by her tone and carefree way of speaking. "Hi," he replied, a genuine smile gracing his lips for the first time that afternoon. "I wear them because my eyes are sensitive to light." "Really? That's a bummer. My name is Alice. What's yours?" "Leo, it's a pleasure, Alice. Nice to meet you. Are you waiting for someone?" "I am, yes." "Oh, what a coincidence. My mum is too. She's meeting some guy from an app. You know, grown-up stuff. I think it's kind of weird, but she says it's normal these days." Leo felt a tightness in his chest. What a small world. Or what a grand irony of fate. He tried to keep his composure. "Is that so? And you're waiting with her?" "Nope. She went to buy water. I stayed here watching the ducks. Did you know ducks? No. Can sleep with one eye open? I saw it on a documentary. It's so they can watch out for predators. Smart, right?" "Very smart," Leo agreed, already won over by the girl's spontaneity. "So what do you do?" "I work with hotels." "Hotels? Like, do you clean the rooms?" Leo laughed, a real laugh that surprised even himself. "Not exactly. I make sure everything runs smoothly. I own a few hotels." "Wow, you must be rich then." The childish frankness was disarming. Leo didn't know whether to laugh or feel sad at life being simplified to numbers and possessions. "You could say that, but money isn't everything, Alice. That's what my mum always says. She says the important thing is to be honest and work with dignity. She works at a hotel too. Isn't that an amazing coincidence?" Leo felt a shiver run down his spine. Something about this conversation was starting to form a puzzle he didn't want to complete just yet. "That's cool. Which hotel does she work at?" "A really fancy hotel downtown. She's on the housekeeping staff. But it's not just cleaning, you know. She organizes everything, takes care of the details. She says every room has to be perfect for the guests. I'm really proud of her. I'm sure she's great at what she does." Alice kept talking, describing the park in vivid detail. She told him about the clouds that looked like cotton candy, about the elderly couple feeding pigeons near the fountain, about the sky that was starting to turn orange as evening approached. Leo listened intently, absorbing each description like brushstrokes of color on a blank canvas. It had been so long since someone had simply talked to him without a hidden agenda, without that excessive caution people usually had. The girl had a gift for bringing lightness. There was no pity in her voice, no discomfort. She just talked, shared her world, and Leo realized he had been smiling more in those few minutes than he had in months. "You know, Alice, you have a special way of seeing things." "Thanks. My mom says I talk too much, but I think it's good to talk. People are too quiet, too sad. I like to make things more cheerful." "And you do, believe me." Just then, a female voice, breathless and worried, cut through the air. "Alice, Alice, you can't just run." "Half like that. I told you to wait by the fountain." The girl turned, and Leo also directed his attention to the newcomer. The woman was approaching quickly, and when she stopped near them, Leo noticed she had fallen suddenly silent. "Mom, look. This is Leo. He owns hotels. And he's waiting for someone too, just like you. What a coincidence, right?" The silence that followed was thick, heavy with something Leo couldn't yet name. The woman was breathing hard, probably from running after her daughter, but there was something more. He waited. "Leo?" Her voice was soft, musical, with a slight tremor. "Leo Anderson," he frowned. "Yes, and you are?" Sarah Davis. We've been talking on the app." The world seemed to stop. Leo felt as if the ground had vanished from under his feet. That voice, he recognized it. They had been exchanging messages for weeks, then voice notes, a connection that had formed slowly, word by word, laugh by laugh. But they had never seen each other. They had never revealed very specific details about their professional lives. They had only shared dreams, fears, hopes. And now there she was in front of him, and her daughter was the little girl who had just brightened his afternoon. "Sarah," he repeated, almost breathless. "You're Sarah." Alice looked from one to the other, confused. "Wait, you guys know each other?" "In a way, yes," Sarah answered, still processing the revelation. "Leo, I didn't know. I never imagined." "Me neither," he said, slowly rising from the bench. "Brian set this up. He said he'd met someone and that it was worth a shot, but he didn't mention any names." "And I agreed to come because a friend insisted I should give it a chance," Sarah added. She said he was someone special, but she didn't give any details. "Fate has a peculiar sense of humor," Leo murmured. Alice, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it, tugged on her mother's hand. "So you already knew each other, and you didn't know it. This is just like in the movies." Sarah laughed, a nervous but genuine laugh, and Leo felt something loosen in his chest. He extended his hand toward her, and Sarah, after a brief hesitation, took it. The touch was electric, simple but profound. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person, Sarah." "The pleasure is all mine, Leo." Alice let out a dramatic sigh. "How romantic. Are you guys going to sit and talk now because I want to see the ducks again?" Sarah blushed, grateful for the growing twilight that hid her flush. "Of course, sweetie. Go on, but don't go too far." Alice ran off, and the two adults stood there, still holding hands, processing the magnitude of that impossible coincidence. "Can we sit?" Leo suggested. "Of course." They returned to the bench, and for a moment they just listened to the sounds around them. Sarah didn't know how to begin. All the conversations they'd had on the app seemed distant now, faced with the palpable reality of his presence. "I wasn't expecting this," she said finally. "When Brian approached me at that coffee shop, I thought it was just a coincidence. He seemed genuine, worried about a friend. I agreed because our conversations on the app were different. You were different." "Different how?" "Honest, real, unpretentious. You never asked what I did, how much I made, where I lived. You just wanted to know about my dreams, my stories, what made me happy." Leo nodded slowly. "Because those things matter more. I learned the hard way that appearances and status mean nothing when it comes to a true connection." Sarah watched him. Even with the sunglasses, there was a vulnerability in him that touched her deeply. She knew from their talks that he had been through hardships, that there were losses in his past, but he never went into detail, and she had respected that. "Leo, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "You're blind, aren't you?" He showed no surprise. In fact, he smiled slightly. "Yes, I lost my sight 15 years ago. I'm sorry I didn't mention it before." "I didn't want it to influence our conversation." Sarah felt a pang of sadness, not for him but for the need he must have felt to hide something so important. "I understand, and it wouldn't have changed anything. Your words always painted such vivid pictures for me that I felt like I could see the world through your eyes." "That's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me," Leo confessed, visibly moved. Alice came running back, interrupting the moment. "Mom, there's an ice cream man, can I please?" Sarah laughed and reached for her wallet. "Here you go. But come right back, okay?" "Promise." As the girl ran off again, Sarah turned her attention back to Leo. "She's incredible," he commented, "so full of life, so spontaneous. She's my light. Raising her alone hasn't been easy, but every second has been worth it." "Alone?" "Her father, it isn't part of our lives. It was his choice, or rather his lack of one." "I'm sorry to hear that, but from the looks of it, you've done a wonderful job." "Thank you. What about you? Do you have kids?" "No, I never found the right person to build that with." "Until now, you mean?" The words slipped out before Sarah could filter them, and she widened her eyes, mortified by her own boldness. Leo, however, smiled, a true smile that lit up his whole face. "Until now," he repeated, savoring the words. They talked for another hour as Alice came and went, eating ice cream, telling stories, bringing him leaves she found pretty. The sky darkened, the park lights came on, and Sarah described everything to Leo, who listened to every word as if they were notes in a melody. When it was finally time to leave, Leo asked for Sarah's phone number. She laughed. "You already have it. We've been talking for weeks." "True, but now I want to hear your voice, knowing exactly who's on the other side." Sarah smiled, her heart racing. "Me too." They said goodbye with a hug. Alice hugged Leo too, making him promise he would see them again. He promised. In the days that followed, the voice notes multiplied. Sarah sent messages about her day, about small victories at work, about the funny things Alice said. Leo replied with stories of his own, with reflections, with plans for the future. And Alice, always present, started sending her own voice notes, full of curious questions and amusing observations about the world. Leo found himself smiling more, laughing more. Life was gaining color, even if he couldn't see it. Or maybe, precisely because of that, he felt it more intensely. They scheduled other dates, walks in the park, coffee at small bakeries Sarah hand-picked, conversations that stretched for hours, without rush, without fear. Leo told her about his company, about the challenges of managing everything without sight, but never mentioned the specific name of the hotel chain. Sarah talked about her job, about the pride she felt in making each room shine, in providing comfort to the guests, but also without naming where she worked. It was as if they were both unconsciously avoiding connecting the dots that could complicate everything. Alice grew attached to Leo in a way that surprised even Sarah. The girl, who had always been reserved with strangers, treated him like he was part of the family. She made drawings for him, which Sarah described in detail. She told him secrets, asked for advice, laughed at his bad jokes. One afternoon, after a walk in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where Sarah had described every plant, every flower, every texture, Leo held her hand for the first time with clear intention. It wasn't accidental, it wasn't casual, it was deliberate. "Sarah," he began, his voice serious, "I need to tell you something." She felt her heart race. "What is it?" "I was married, well, almost married. I was engaged. The woman I loved left me when I lost my sight and my father. She couldn't stand the idea of being with someone she thought would never be successful again. It destroyed me. And since then I've built walls around myself. Sky high, walls to keep from getting hurt again." Sarah squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. "But with you, those walls are crumbling, and it terrifies me and excites me at the same time. You and Alice have brought something into my life that I thought I'd never have again. Joy, hope, the feeling that the future can be good. Leo, I'm not going to lie and say I'm not scared too. Raising Alice alone taught me to be strong, but it also made me cautious. But what I feel for you is real. It's scary because it's real." They kissed. Right there, in that garden full of life under the afternoon sun, while Alice played a few feet away. It was a gentle kiss, loaded with promises and fears, with past and future. The weeks turned into months. Leo and Sarah built a routine. Dinners at her place, where Leo learned to cook with Sarah guiding him. Sunday outings, voice notes from Alice before bed that always made Leo laugh. He started to imagine a future, a family. The word that had seemed so distant for so long was now taking shape, sound, feeling. One morning, Sarah woke up early. As always, the routine was relentless. At 5:30 the alarm went off. She got up, made coffee, woke Alice with kisses on her cheek, helped the girl get ready for school. Then she rushed to catch the bus that would take her to work. The commute took an hour, crossing the city from one end to the other, but Sarah didn't complain. That job was a blessing. It paid the bills, gave her life dignity, allowed her to raise her daughter decently. The hotel where she worked was one of the most luxurious in New York. Sarah was part of the housekeeping team, responsible for keeping the rooms impeccable. Every detail mattered. The towels folded in a specific way, the sheets stretched without a single wrinkle, the amenities positioned with millimeter precision. It was a job that demanded perfection, and Sarah prided herself on being one of the best. Her colleagues respected her. Rita, the supervisor, always praised her dedication. Sarah was never absent, never late, never let a mistake slip by. She was a professional to the core, and that meant everything to her, especially after being fired from previous jobs by bosses who couldn't tolerate single mothers who needed to rush out when the school called to say their child was sick. At this hotel, however, she had found respect. The company had clear policies, fair benefits. Sarah had never met the owner. She knew there was an entrepreneur in charge, someone who rarely showed up, who managed everything from afar. The managers handled the day-to-day. For her, having a stable job was enough. As she cleaned one of the penthouse suites that morning, Sarah found herself thinking about Leo. They had seen each other the night before. They had dinner at a discreet Italian restaurant she had chosen. Leo had insisted on paying, but Sarah had split the bill. She made a point of it. She didn't want him to think she was there for his money. Interest, the word bothered her. Leo had mentioned in a few conversations that he had been hurt by someone who had used him. He didn't go into detail, but Sarah had heard the pain in his voice, and she understood. She had been used before, too. Alice's father had promised her the world, then disappeared when he found out she was pregnant. But Leo was different. Sarah felt it. He really listened to her. He laughed at her silly jokes. He asked about Alice with genuine interest. He sent goodnight voice notes that made her fall asleep smiling. She was falling in love, and it terrified her. As she wiped the window, admiring the city view from up high, Sarah thought about how strange life was. Here she was, cleaning a luxury suite that cost more per night than she earned in a week, while falling in love with a man who could probably buy the entire hotel without batting an eye. Not that it mattered to her. Leo could be poor and she would love him just the same. But there was a latent insecurity. What if he found out she was just a housekeeper? What if he thought she wasn't good enough for him? What if their whole connection proved too fragile to withstand the differences between them? Sarah shook her head, pushing the negative thoughts away. She finished the room, checked every detail, and moved on to the next. The work continued, and with it, the routine that kept her anchored in reality. That afternoon, after picking Alice up from school, Sarah received a voice note from Leo. His voice always made her smile. "Hey Sarah, just wanted to say I'm thinking about you and Alice. Last night was amazing. You have a way of making everything special, you know that? Even eating pasta becomes a memorable experience when it's with you. Hope to see you soon, and I have a surprise for you two. Nothing extravagant, just something I think you'll like. Call me when you can. Kisses." Alice, who was standing next to her, heard the message and started jumping up and down. "Mom, he has a surprise. What is it?" "I don't know." "Sweetie, we'll find out." "You really like him, don't you?" Sarah looked at her daughter, at those clever eyes that missed nothing. "I do." "And you?" "Me too. He's nice. And funny. And he doesn't mind that I ask a million questions. Julia's uncle at school doesn't let her talk when he's around. But Leo listens to me. For real." Sarah felt her heart swell with emotion. Her daughter deserved someone who would listen to her, who would value her, and Leo did that effortlessly. That evening, Leo stopped by their apartment. He brought a large box and a mischievous smile. "What's this?" Sarah asked, curious. "The surprise. But it's for Alice to open." The girl didn't need to be told twice. She tore off the wrapping paper, and her eyes widened when she saw the contents. "A painting set, with an easel. Mom, look." Sarah was speechless. It was a complete professional kit, with canvases, brushes, and paints of every color. "Leo, this is so expensive. You didn't have to." "I know I didn't have to, but I wanted to. Alice told me she loves to draw, and I thought she'd like to try real painting. And I also thought that since I can't see the colors, she could describe them to me while she paints." Alice ran and hugged Leo tightly. He returned the hug, visibly moved. "Thank you, Leo. I'm going to paint so many things for you. I can't wait." While Alice ran to test out the paints, Sarah approached Leo. "You're incredible, you know that. I just want to make you two happy. And you do. More than you know." They kissed right there, in the simple but cozy living room of Sarah's apartment, a kiss that said more than words ever could. The following weeks were the happiest Leo could remember. He and Sarah saw each other whenever possible. Alice sent daily voice notes, describing her paintings, telling him about school, asking questions about everything. Leo answered every message with care and attention. One day Brian called Leo. "So, my friend, how are things with Sarah?" "Better than I could have ever imagined, Brian. Thanks for insisting on that date. You were right." "I'm always right. So when do I get to meet her officially?" "Soon. I'm waiting for the right moment. Don't take too long. Life moves fast." "I know." Leo hung up, thinking about his friend's words. Maybe it was time to take the next step, to introduce Sarah to his circle, to make things more official. But there was a fear he couldn't ignore. What if it all fell apart? What if the reality of who he was, of his public life, changed the way she saw him? He decided he would wait a little longer. Just a little longer, until he was sure they were ready. Meanwhile, Sarah was facing her own dilemmas. At work, Rita had mentioned there would be an important meeting next week. The owner of the hotel chain was coming in person to speak with the staff. It was rare, almost unheard of. Everyone was nervous, wanting to make a good impression. Sarah didn't care much. As long as she did her job well, she saw no reason to worry. But there was a curiosity. Who was this mysterious man who ran everything? The night before the meeting, Leo sent Sarah a voice note. "Hey, love. Just wanted to say good night. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day for me. I have an important meeting at work, but I'll be thinking of you the whole time. Sleep well. Dream of me." Sarah smiled as she listened. She would have a hectic day too with that meeting, but not in her wildest dreams did she imagine that the next day would change everything, that the truth, hidden by coincidences and innocent omissions, was about to come to light in the most brutal way. Alice came into her mum's room that night, carrying a new drawing. It was a painting made with the kit Leo had given her. 3 figures holding hands, a woman, a girl, a man. Above them, a colourful sky full of stars. "Mum, I made this for you, it's the 3 of us." Sarah felt tears well up. "It's beautiful, sweetie. Let's put it on the fridge." "No, I want you to keep this one, in your room, so you can always look at it and remember that we can be happy, the 3 of us." Sarah hugged her daughter, her heart overflowing. Alice was right. They could be happy. The 3 of them, a family. The word that for so long had meant just her, and Alice now took on a new dimension. "You're right, my beautiful girl. We're going to be happy." After Alice fell asleep, Sarah stared at the painting, the vibrant colours, the hope printed in every brushstroke. She thought of Leo, of how he had transformed their lives in such a short time. She thought about the future, about the possibilities. And then, for a brief moment, a shadow of worry crossed her mind. What if there was something she didn't know? Some obstacle she hadn't considered? She pushed the thought away. There was no reason for pessimism. Everything was going well. They were honest with each other. There were no secrets that could destroy what they were building. At least that's what she believed, and that everything they had built would be put to the test in a way neither of them was prepared to face. But for now, on that quiet night, each in their own home, they slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that was approaching. A storm that would reveal not only who they really were, but also whether the love they felt would be strong enough to survive the truth. The weeks following that first meeting in Central Park were like a movie Leo never imagined starring in. Sarah and he started talking daily, first through text messages, which Leo's phone's voice-to-text feature converted to audio. Then through long phone calls that stretched into the early morning, when Alice was asleep and Sarah finally had a moment to herself. Leo discovered that Sarah was 29, 9 years younger than him, but she had a maturity that transcended age, a wisdom gained from daily struggles, from raising a daughter alone, from the resilience of someone who wakes up before the sun and comes home after it sets. She told him about her unexpected pregnancy at 21, about the guy who promised to stay but disappeared. In the 3rd month, about her decision to keep the baby even against her own family's wishes. Sarah's mother, a strict and religious woman, had never fully accepted the situation. She helped financially when she could, but always made it clear that it was a burden, a consequence of her daughter's wrong choices. Sarah had distanced herself over time, preferring difficult independence to help that came with judgment attached. And Leo? Leo found himself sharing things he had never told anyone, about the loneliness he felt, even when surrounded by employees and meetings, about the fear that consumed him every time he had to trust someone, about the nights he woke up in a panic, feeling the walls of his apartment closing in on him, remembering he would never again see the face of his own mother, who had passed away when he was just 15. Leo's mother had gone suddenly, a health problem that left no time for goodbyes, and his father, lost in his own grief, had taken refuge in his work, building a hotel empire, but leaving his son an orphan of presence and affection. When his father also passed 10 years ago, Leo inherited not only the hotels, but also a loneliness that seemed to be part of the Anderson family DNA. Sarah listened to everything without judgment. She didn't offer cheap advice or cliches. She just listened. And in her silence, Leo found a comfort he didn't know he needed. But there was Alice. The girl had become an integral part of this strange emotional triangle that was forming. She sent voice notes to Leo almost every day. Sometimes they were stories from school, about the teacher with funny glasses or the classmate with a loose tooth. Other times they were profound observations about life, spoken with the disarming sincerity of children. And Leo always replied, always, with the same seriousness and attention he would give an adult. On a rainy Saturday in September, Sarah accepted Leo's invitation for coffee. Not just anywhere, but at a coffee shop he had frequented since before he lost his sight. A cozy spot in the West Village, where the owner, Mr. Henderson, had known Leo for over 15 years. Alice came along. not as an intruder, but as a natural part of what was being built. When they entered, the smell of fresh coffee and buttered toast filled Leo's nostrils. He breathed in deeply, letting the memories come. How many times had he been there with his father, in the rare moments the man allowed himself a break? How many lonely afternoons had he spent at those tables after the darkness came? "Leo, my boy," Mr. Henderson's deep voice boomed from the counter. "It's been a while. And who are these beautiful ladies you've brought with you?" Sarah must have blushed. Leo sensed it in the way she hesitated before answering. "Sarah, and this is my daughter Alice. A pleasure, Miss Sarah. And young lady Alice, what a beautiful name." "Thank you," Alice replied excitedly. "Have you known Leo for a long time?" "I sure have, since he was a young man full of dreams and no beard." Mr. Henderson laughed. "He used to sit at that corner table and read thick business books for hours." Leo smiled at the memory. "Good times." "They're still good times, my friend." Mr. Henderson clapped him on the shoulder. "You guys want the usual?" "Yes, please. And for Sarah and Alice." "Chocolate milk," Alice requested quickly. "With lots of milk," Sarah added. "And we'll have some buttered toast too, please." "I brought my drawing book," Alice announced as soon as they sat down. "Can I draw while you guys talk?" "Of course, sweetie." Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. While Alice focused on her drawings, Leo and Sarah talked about everything and nothing, about the small details that make up a life. Sarah spoke about her routine at the hotel, about the guests who left generous tips and those who treated the staff as if they were invisible. She talked about her dream of one day going to college, maybe for business, maybe hospitality, something that would allow her to grow professionally. Leo listened, and in every word he sensed the woman's determination. It wasn't self-pity, it was resilience, and that touched him deeply. "Have you ever thought about asking for a promotion?" Leo asked. Sarah laughed. "Ask? Who would I ask? I barely know who the managers are. We only see the floor supervisor, and he's pretty... how can I put it? Distant." Leo frowned. "What do you mean, distant?" "Like, we're treated like numbers, you know. You clean a room, move on to the next. At the end of the month, you get your paycheck. If you did something wrong, you get yelled at. If you did it right, nobody says anything. That's just how it is. It shouldn't be like that." "But it is," Sarah shrugged. "But I don't mind. I do my job well because it's important to me, not for anyone else." Leo felt a pang of guilt. This was happening in his company, employees being treated like disposable cogs in a machine. He knew there were problems, that some managers were tougher than necessary, but hearing it from Sarah's mouth gave him a perspective he'd never had. "I'm going to change that." Sarah touched his hand. "On the table. You don't have to. You don't owe me anything, and I don't want you to do anything for me because of this, what's happening between us. But I want to do it because it's the right thing to do. Not for you, for everyone." "Leo," her voice turned serious, "promise me something. Don't mix this. Don't mix work with us, because if you do, it'll get complicated. And I don't want complicated. I want simple. I want real." He squeezed her hand. "I promise." Alice looked up from her drawings. "Look what I made." Sarah took the paper. "It's beautiful, sweetie, but describe it for Leo." Alice perked up. "It's us, the three of us. I'm in the middle, holding my mum's hand and your hand, Leo, and we're in a park with lots of trees and flowers." Leo felt his chest tighten. "Can I keep this drawing?" "You can. I made it for you." Sarah was quiet. Leo realized she was emotional. The dates became a routine. Walks in the park, coffee on Saturday afternoons. And on one of those afternoons, Leo invited Sarah to dinner at his apartment. A penthouse on the Upper East Side, with a view of the city he couldn't see but still loved. Sarah hesitated, not out of distrust but out of apprehension. It was a big step, going to his place, without Alice, who would be staying with a friendly neighbor. But she accepted. When Sarah arrived, Leo had everything ready. He hadn't cooked himself, as his culinary skills were limited, but he had ordered food from an Italian restaurant he knew. Fresh pasta, red wine, and a bossa nova playlist playing softly in the background. "Wow," Sarah said as she entered. "Your apartment is beautiful." "Thanks. Make yourself at home." They talked over dinner. Sarah described the view from the window, the illuminated buildings, the city pulsing below, and Leo described how he imagined it all, based on his memories from when he could still see. After dinner, Leo did something he hadn't done in years. He went to the grand piano that occupied a corner of the living room. "You said you played," Sarah remembered, sitting on the nearby sofa. "A long time ago. Play for me." Leo hesitated. His hands were trembling, not from technical nervousness, but from emotion. Playing the piano was something intimate, almost sacred. It was opening a part of himself that had been locked away for a long time. But he sat down. He positioned his fingers on the keys, and he began. The notes of "The Girl from Ipanema" flowed smoothly, melancholically, full of feeling. Leo played as if he were conversing with the music, as if each chord were an unspoken word. And when he finished, the silence that followed was heavy with emotion. "That was beautiful," Sarah said, her voice thick. Leo stood up and went to her. Sarah stood up too, and there in the middle of the in the room, under the soft light of the lamps, they kissed for the first time. It was a slow, exploratory kiss, full of unsaid promises, and when they parted, tears were streaming down Leo's face. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping them away. "Don't be sorry." Sarah touched his face. "Never be sorry for feeling." The months that followed were ones of discovery. Leo introduced Sarah to restaurants she had never imagined visiting. Sarah introduced Leo to a simplicity he had forgotten existed. Picnics in the park, afternoons watching Alice play, long, unpretentious conversations. And Alice blossomed. In Leo, she had gained a figure who filled a space she didn't even know existed. He took her for ice cream, listened to her voice notes attentively, and answered her impossible questions with seriousness and affection. But there was a pending issue. Sarah worked at Leo's hotel, and although they had agreed to keep things separate, the situation was a ticking time bomb. Leo didn't go to the Anderson Grand often. He preferred to manage from a distance, with online meetings and detailed reports. But in November, a critical situation required his presence. Problems with the staff on an entire floor, guest complaints, and a manager who needed to be replaced. Phil, who accompanied Leo to all important in-person meetings, tried to dissuade him. "Let me handle this, Leo. You don't need to go." "Yes, I do. They're my hotels, my responsibility." "Does Sarah know you're going?" Leo hesitated. "No. It's her day off today, and I didn't want to worry her. This could go wrong. Or it could go right. Maybe it's time to make everything official, to go public." Phil sighed. "Are you sure?" "I am." But Leo wasn't prepared for what would happen. When he arrived at the hotel, accompanied by Phil and his personal assistant Claudia, the atmosphere was tense. The housekeeping staff was gathered in the basement event hall for an emergency meeting called by the operations manager. And Sarah was there. She wasn't supposed to be. It was her day off. But a colleague had called asking for help covering an extra shift, and Sarah, always supportive, had agreed. When Leo entered the hall, guided by Phil, the murmur of conversations ceased. All the employees stood up, a mix of respect and apprehension. "Good morning," Leo said in a firm voice. "Thank you all for being here. I know there have been some recent issues, and I've come personally to hear what you have to say." That's when Sarah saw him, or rather, when she recognized him by his voice. Leo felt her gaze land on him. He didn't see it, but he felt it. It was as if the density of the air had changed, and from the sudden silence that fell, he knew that others had noticed something too. The meeting continued. Leo listened to the complaints, the suggestions, and promised changes, but his mind was divided. Part of him was processing professional information. The other part was entirely focused on Sarah, who had remained completely silent throughout the meeting. When it was over, Leo asked to speak with each employee individually in a private room. It was a strategy Phil had suggested to better understand the internal dynamics. Sarah was one of the last. When she entered the room and the door closed, the silence was deafening. "You," she said finally, her voice controlled but clearly shaken. "You're my boss." "Sarah, no." She held up a hand. "Let me speak. I've worked here for 7 years. 7 years, Leo. And you never... Not. Once you never came here, and now of all times. I didn't know you'd be here. You said you had the day off. And I did. But I came to cover for Jessica because her mum is sick." Sarah ran a hand over her face. "People are looking at me funny, like I did something. You didn't do anything wrong. But it looks like I did. It looks like I'm here for your money, that I knew who you were from the beginning." Leo stood up, walking around the table. "Sarah, you know that's not true." "I know. But they don't. And now they're going to start talking. They'll say I'm with you for the money, that I set this whole thing up. Then we'll tell them the truth, how we met." "And what is the truth, Leo? That we met on a dating app? That it was all a crazy coincidence? Who's going to believe that?" Leo reached out his hand, but Sarah took a step back. "No, not here. Not now." "Sarah, please. I need to think." Her voice was broken. "I need to process this. Because everything has changed, everything. Nothing has changed between us." "Yes, it has. Because now I know that every time I step foot in this hotel, people are going to look at me and think I'm the boss's girlfriend. And that's going to take away all the credit for everything I've achieved here. All the respect I've built." And she walked out of the room, leaving Leo alone with a growing emptiness in his chest. The revelation that should have been simple had turned into a deep crack, threatening to destroy everything they had built together. The days that followed were the hardest Leo had lived since losing his sight. Sarah didn't answer his calls. She replied to his texts with polite but distant one-word answers, and the voice notes from Alice, which used to arrive daily, stopped completely. Leo tried to focus on work. He implemented the changes he had promised at the hotel. He replaced the operations manager with someone more humane. He established a direct line of communication with the employees. He increased salaries and benefits. But it all felt empty without being able to share it with Sarah. Phil tried to console him in his pragmatic way. "Give her time, it's a lot to process." "What? If she doesn't come back? Then you'll accept it and move on. But I think she'll be back. You saw the way she looked at you, Leo. That was real." "But that was before she knew who I am." "She already knew who you are. She just didn't know your job title." Leo wanted to believe it, but the insecurity that Megan had planted in him years ago came rushing back. What if Sarah really had been interested in the money? What if it was all just an elaborate sham? No. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. Sarah wasn't like that. Alice wasn't like that. What they had was real. It had to be. On a rainy Thursday, 2 weeks after the incident at the hotel, Leo received a notification on his phone. A voice note from Alice. His heart raced as he pressed play. The girl's voice was different, lacking its usual joy, serious, almost formal. "Hi, Leo, it's Alice. My mom doesn't know I'm sending this. She's sad, really sad. She cries in the bathroom when she thinks I'm asleep, and I don't know what to do. Are you mean like her dad? Because if you... I'm going to be really mad at you. My mom is the best person in the world, and she doesn't deserve to be sad. If you really like her, do something. If you don't, then stop pretending. Bye." The message ended, and Leo stood there, phone in hand, feeling the girl's words pierce his chest like sharp blades. "Are you mean like her dad?" The question echoed in his mind. Alice was right. He was being mean, not by acting, but by not acting, by passively accepting Sarah's distance, by not fighting for what they had. Leo picked up the phone and called Claudia, his assistant. "Claudia, I need you to do something for me." "Of course, Mr. Anderson. What do you need?" "I want all of Sarah Davis's professional records, everything, since she started with the company." There was a pause. "Sir, that's..." "I know how it looks, but I need it. It's important." 2 hours later, Claudia was in his apartment with a folder full of documents and reports that she read aloud to Leo. Sarah Davis had been with the company for exactly 7 years and 4 months. She started as a cleaning assistant, promoted to housekeeper after a year. She had never received a single warning. On the contrary, she had 3 formal commendations on file from guests who had made a point of highlighting the quality of her work. She had never missed a day without a valid reason, never been late. She voluntarily participated in training and development programs. Her record was impeccable, and more importantly, in 7 years, she had never asked for favors, sucked up to superiors, or tried to use any kind of influence. She was, in every respect, an exemplary employee who worked hard and with dignity. Leo listened to every word, feeling shame grow inside him. How could he have doubted her? How could he even for a second have questioned the integrity of that woman? "Claudia," he said when she finished reading, "thank you, and I'm sorry for making you work late." "No problem, Mr. Anderson, but can I offer an opinion?" "You can. Whoever this woman is, she's special, and from what I've seen in her records, she deserves for you to fight for her." Leo smiled sadly. "I know, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." That night, Leo didn't sleep. He stayed awake, planning what he would say, how he would say it, where he would say it. It had to be perfect, it had to be sincere. He had to be vulnerable in a way he had never been with anyone before. On Saturday morning, Leo asked Phil to drive him to the address Claudia had discreetly provided. A simple apartment building in Queens. It wasn't close. The traffic was chaotic, but Leo didn't care. He was determined. When they arrived, Phil asked, "Want me to go up with you?" "No, this is something I have to do alone." The elevator was broken. Leo climbed the 5 flights of stairs, guided by the handrails and by mentally counting the steps. When he reached the apartment, he took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Light footsteps approached. The door opened, and from her breathing, Leo knew it was Sarah. "Leo," she said, surprised, "what are you doing here?" "I needed to talk to you, in person." There was a pause. "How did you find my address?" "Through HR," Leo admitted. "And before you get mad, I know it was an invasion of privacy. But I had to see you, to hear you. And not over text, not over the phone, here, face to face," Sarah sighed. "Come in." The apartment was small but cozy. Leo could tell by the echo of the sounds that it wasn't large, but there was care in the details, from the smell of freshly brewed coffee to the quiet music playing on the radio, to the muffled laughter of Alice coming from another room. "Sit," Sarah directed. "Want some coffee?" "Please." She returned a few minutes later with 2 mugs. Leo held his, feeling the warmth seep into his hands. "Sarah," he began, "I know I messed up. I know the way things happened was horrible. And I'm sorry, I truly am, but I need you to understand something. I didn't know you worked at the hotel, not in the sense that I knew you as an employee. I have hundreds of employees, and I manage from a distance precisely because it's hard for me to be there. It's hard to be anywhere where people look at me with pity or curiosity." "I know, Leo," Sarah said softly. "I never thought you knew, but that doesn't change the fact that it's complicated now." "Why is it complicated?" "Because people will talk. They're already talking. The day you were there, the girls were whispering, making jokes, saying I was going to ask to be made a manager now, that I'd hit the jackpot." Leo gripped his mug tightly. "And what did you say?" "Nothing. Because the more you defend yourself, the more people think it's true. So I just kept my head down and kept working, like I always have." "Sarah, you can't let this destroy what we have." "And what do we have, Leo?" she asked, her voice tired. "We've known each other for 3 months. 3. And in those 3 months it was beautiful. It was perfect. But now reality has knocked on the door. And the reality is that you're my boss, and I'm your employee, and that will always be between us. Not if you quit." The silence that followed was heavy. "What?" Sarah finally said. "Quit. Leave the company. I'll help you find another job. Or better yet, I'll support you while you go to college, like you always wanted. You can study, get your degree, Build the career you deserve. Leo, her voice was trembling, are you listening to yourself? You want me to quit the job I've built for 7 years, the place where I earned respect with my own sweat. For what? So you can support me? So I can become your dependent? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Sarah stood up. You don't get it, Leo. You'll never get it because you've never had to fight to prove your worth. You inherited everything. I'm not judging you for it, but it's the truth. And for me, everything I've achieved has been through my work, my pride, my dignity. And you're asking me to throw that away. I just want to help you. I don't need help, I need respect. I need you to understand that I'm not some damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. I'm a strong woman who's raising a daughter on her own and who pays her own bills. Sarah's words echoed in the apartment, and Leo just sat there feeling the weight of every one of them. You're right, he said finally. I'm sorry, I ruined everything, didn't I? Sarah sat back down. Leo heard her sigh. No, you didn't ruin everything, but you need to understand a few things. First, I don't want your money, I never did. Second, I'm not quitting, that job is mine, I earned it. And third, I need some time to think, to decide if we can make this work without me losing my identity in the process. How much time? As long as it takes. Leo nodded, feeling his heart ache. And Alice? Can I keep talking to her? Sarah was silent for a moment. She's hurting from this too, you know. She got attached to you. More than I realized. I got attached to her too. Then, yes, you can keep talking to her, but take it slow, Leo. Don't promise things you can't deliver. I would never do that. Leo stood up. Sarah walked him to the door. Sarah, he said before leaving, I love you, and I know it's early to say that we've only known each other for a short time, but it's true. And it's not because you're perfect, it's because you're real, because you made me feel alive again. And I'll wait as long as it takes, but don't give up on us. Please. Sarah didn't answer, but Leo felt a hand gently touch his face, wiping away a tear he hadn't even realized was falling. I love you too, she whispered, and that's why this hurts so much. Leo went home in silence. Phil, sensing his friend's emotional state, didn't ask any questions. He just drove. But on Monday, something happened. Sarah didn't show up for work. Not on Tuesday either. On Wednesday, HR called her and received news that shook Leo when Claudia told him Sarah had submitted a letter of resignation. Leo called her immediately. You quit? I did. Why? You said you wouldn't. And I wasn't going. But I can't take it anymore, Leo. The gossip, the stares, the jokes. Yesterday, a colleague had the nerve to ask if I was already living with you, if Alice was going to a private school now, as if I were some kind of gold digger. Sarah, take it back. Don't do this. I already did, and I've already found another job. Cleaning houses. Less money. More dignity. Leo felt his throat tighten. So that's it? You're just going to throw it all away? No. You threw it away when you showed up there without warning. I didn't do it on purpose. But you did it. And now we have to deal with the consequences. And us? What about us? I need time, Leo. For real. I need to rebuild my life, my job, my routine. And when... If I can do that, maybe we can talk again. The call ended, and Leo stood there holding his phone, feeling like he had lost not only the woman he loved, but also the hope that things could ever work out. The days turned into weeks. Leo tried to stay in touch with Alice through sporadic voice notes. The girl replied, but her messages were short, sad. She said her mum was working a lot, that she came home late, that she seemed tired. And Leo? Leo threw himself into his work. He revamped processes, improved conditions. He personally visited each of his 12 hotels, something he had never done before. He talked to employees, listened to complaints, implemented solutions, but none of it filled the void that Sarah and Alice had left. On a Friday night, 3 weeks after his last conversation with Sarah, Leo was at home when the doorman buzzed. It was a delivery. A small envelope, no return address. Inside there was a drawing. Leo asked Phil, who was there for a meeting, to describe it. "It's 3 people," Phil said, his voice strange. "Holding hands, and underneath it's written, family." Leo held the drawing, running his fingers over the crayon marks on the paper. "It's from Alice." "I know. And there's a note too. It's from Sarah." "Read it to me." Phil hesitated, but then read, "Leo, Alice made this drawing 3 months ago. The day we had our first coffee together, she said it was her family, and I laughed, told her she was a dreamer. But now, looking at this drawing, I realized she saw something I was too afraid to see, that we could be a family, that you could be the person who was missing. I still need time, but I don't want you to give up. Because I'm not going to give up either, Sarah." Leo felt the tears fall freely, and for the first time in weeks, a genuine smile appeared on his face. There was still hope. There was still a chance. And he was going to fight for it. He was going to fight. For Sarah. For Alice. For the family they could be. Alice's drawing stayed on Leo's nightstand. Every morning when he woke up, he would run his fingers over the lines the little girl had drawn, feeling every curve, every mark of the crayon. It was his daily reminder that there was still something worth fighting for. The weeks dragged on with painful slowness. Leo kept sending voice notes to Alice, always careful not to pressure her, not to promise too much. He told her about his work, about the songs he was rediscovering on the piano, about the small steps he was taking to become a better person. And Alice always replied. With that disarming honesty of children, she told him about school, about her friends, and especially about her mum. Sarah was working a lot. She cleaned 3 different houses during the week. The money was less than at the hotel, but she said at least now she could sleep peacefully without worrying about gossip or judgment. Leo listened to every word, feeling a mix of pride and guilt. Pride in Sarah's strength, guilt for having been even indirectly the cause of so much suffering. Phil insisted he should move on. "Leo, it's been 2 months. If she wanted to come back, she would have by now." But Leo would shake his head. "She asked for time, and I'm going to give her all the time she needs. And what if that time is forever? Then at least I'll know I respected her decision, that I didn't pressure her, that I loved her the right way." Phil would sigh, but deep down, he admired his friend's determination. It was on a rainy afternoon in December that everything changed. Leo was in his office when he received a call from an unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Anderson?" It was a female voice he didn't recognize. "Yes." "This is Jessica. I used to work with Sarah at the hotel." Leo sat up straighter in his chair. "Yes, Jessica. Is everything okay?" "Look, I don't know if I should be calling, but Sarah's my friend, and I know you care about her, and I wanted you to know that she's not doing well, not well at all." Leo's heart pounded. "What happened?" "Nothing serious. It's just that, look, she's working too hard. She wakes up at 4 in the morning, takes 3 buses, cleans houses until 8 at night, and Alice is alone after school. Sarah's mum is helping a little, but it's hard, and I can see that Sarah is exhausted, physically and emotionally. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you're both being stupid, with all due respect. We saw how she looked at you, and we saw how you looked at her. Even without seeing, you could see it. And then, because of some gossip, some jealous people, you two broke up, and now you're both miserable, and that's just stupid." Leo was silent for a moment. "Jessica, I can't force anything. She asked for time. Time is one thing, self-torture is another, and what she's going through right now is self-torture. So if you really care about her, do something. Go there. Talk to her. Fix this. I don't know if she'll see me. Try. At least try." The call ended, and Leo stood there, phone in hand, processing everything. Jessica was right. He was respecting Sarah's time, but what if that time was just prolonging their suffering? He picked up the phone and called Sarah. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3, voicemail. He hung up, without leaving a message. He tried again later. Nothing. And again at night. Nothing. The next day he sent a text. "Sarah, I need to talk to you, please. Just 5 minutes. I promise that afterward, I'll respect whatever decision you make." The reply came hours later, short and direct. "Not now, Leo, please." But Leo couldn't give up. Not after Jessica's call. Not after imagining Sarah exhausted, Alice alone, all because of a situation he could have prevented. It was Phil who had the idea. "Talk to Alice, ask her to convince her mom." Leo shook his head. "I can't use a child like that. It's not using her, it's asking for help. And you know Alice wants you two to get back together." Leo hesitated, but Phil's logic made sense. He recorded a voice note for Alice. "Hi, Alice, it's Leo. I know you're a kid and this is grown-up stuff, but I need your help. I need to talk to your mom in person, and she doesn't want to see me. Do you think you could, I don't know, convince her? Just for 5 minutes. I promise I won't make your mom sad. I just need to say something important. Can you help me?" Alice's reply came the next day in a video. Leo asked Phil to describe it. "She's in the kitchen," Phil narrated. "Her mom's in the background cooking, and she's saying, 'Hold on.'" Phil turned on the sound. "Leo, I talked to my mom. She said she doesn't want to see you right now, but I told her you're nice and that you promised only 5 minutes. Then she got mad at me. Said I shouldn't meddle in grown-up things. Then I cried. And she got even madder, and now she's cooking and banging the pots and pans really angrily. I think I did something wrong. I'm sorry." The video ended and Leo felt a tightness in his chest. He didn't want to cause more problems between mother and daughter. But that night, Sarah called. "Leo." "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have involved Alice. Stop," she interrupted him. "Alice was right. We need to talk, face to face, but not at my apartment, and not in a public place." "Where then?" "Remember the park, where we first met?" "I remember. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., at the same bench." "I'll be there." The call ended, and Leo stood there with a mix of hope and fear. Tomorrow he would have his chance. 5 minutes to say everything he felt. 5 minutes to win back the woman he loved. The next afternoon, Leo arrived at the park half an hour early. He sat on the bench, listening to the familiar sounds. The fountain, the birds, the children playing. Everything was the same as that first afternoon when Alice had appeared in his life. At 6 o'clock sharp, he heard the footsteps. He knew that walk. Sarah. "Hi," she said, sitting down next to him. "Hi." There was a silence, then Sarah spoke. "You have 5 minutes, like you promised." Leo took a deep breath. 5 minutes. 300 seconds. He had to choose every word carefully. "Sarah, I've spent the last 2 months thinking about everything that happened. And I've realized a few things. First, I was an idiot. I should have told you I was going to the hotel. I should have prepared you. I should have thought about the consequences. Second, I was arrogant. When I offered to support you, I didn't realize I was diminishing everything you'd achieved. I just wanted to help, but I did it the wrong way. And third, I'm scared, really scared. Ever since Megan left me, I've built walls, sky-high walls. And you and Alice, you tore down those walls. And when that happened, I panicked, because loving is terrifying. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And I didn't know how to do that anymore." Leo paused, wiping away a tear. "I didn't come here to ask you to come back, not the way we were. Because you're right. The dynamic was complicated. I was your boss, and that was always going to be between us. So I did something. I sold the Anderson Grand." "What?" Sarah whispered in disbelief. "I sold it to a hotel group from Chicago, a reputable group that will keep all the employees and improve their conditions. And with the money from the sale, I created a fund for employees who want to go to school, full college scholarships, and the first scholarship is yours if you want it." "Leo, Wait, let me finish. You don't have to accept it. You don't owe me anything. But I needed to do this, not for you, for me, because I realized that hotel was always a burden, a legacy I carried without question. And maybe it's time to build something new, something that's truly mine, something that makes sense." "And what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Maybe open something smaller, more personal, or maybe do consulting. Help other hotels be better, more human. But what I do know is that I want to do it with you by my side. Not as an employee, not as a dependent, but as a partner, as an equal. Leo reached out his hand, finding Sarah's. I love you. And I know that doesn't fix everything, that we'll still have problems, that life is complicated. But I want to try, for real, the right way. Are you in? Sarah was silent for so long that Leo started to think he had ruined everything again. But then he felt her hands holding his face. You're impossible, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You sold a hotel? I did. For me? For us, Leo corrected. And then Sarah kissed him. It was a kiss wet with tears, full of emotion and relief. When they parted, she was smiling. I love you, too, and I'm in, but on one condition. What's that? We take this slow, no pressure, no rushing, one step at a time. Agreed. And you're going to have to win back Alice because she's pretty mad at you. Leo laughed. I accept the challenge. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding. Leo and Sarah started seeing each other again, but carefully, respecting each other's boundaries. Alice, who at first pretended to be angry, soon went back to sending her daily voice notes, filling Leo's life with her contagious joy. Sarah enrolled in business school, using the scholarship Leo had created. She studied at night after work, with a determination that inspired everyone around her. Leo, for his part, found a new purpose. He started consulting for small hotels and inns, teaching more humane management practices, and he discovered he enjoyed it much more than running a distant empire. They moved in together just 8 months after their reconciliation, not to Leo's penthouse, which was too big and too cold, but to a cozy house in Park Slope with a small backyard where Alice could play. The adjustment wasn't easy. There were arguments about chores, about personal space, about how to raise Alice, but they talked, always, never running from conflicts but also never letting them grow. It was on a July evening, almost a year after they got back together, that Leo worked up the courage. He had planned everything with Alice's help, who was more excited than he was. They were having dinner, the three of them, when Leo stood up from the table. Sarah, there's something I want to ask you. She must have sensed something in his tone, because she fell quiet. Alice, Leo called. The girl ran out and came back with a small old box. This belonged to my mother, Leo explained, holding the box, and to my grandmother before her. It's an old ring full of history, and I would like, if you'll accept, for it to become part of our story. Leo opened the box, and Alice described it excitedly. Mom, it's a ring with a little stone that sparkles. Sarah was crying. Leo could hear it in her muffled sobs. Marry me? He asked. Not because I need to prove anything, not because it's what's expected, but because I want to build a life with you. Officially, legally, eternally. Yes, Sarah said through her tears. Yes, yes, yes! Alice jumped in her chair, screaming with joy. And there, in that simple kitchen, smelling of home-cooked food and a child's laughter, Leo felt like he was finally home. The wedding was simple. At City Hall, with just a few close friends. Phil was the best man, Jessica the maid of honor, and Alice, the proudest flower girl in the world. Sarah wore a simple white dress she bought at a downtown shop. Leo wore the suit he used for important meetings. And when they exchanged their vows, they both cried. Life went on. Sarah graduated 3 years later with honors. She got a job at a corporate events company, organizing conferences and conventions. Leo expanded his consulting business, becoming a leading voice in human-centered service management. Alice grew up. She became a teenager, went through the phase of finding everything boring, including her parents. But she always kept that sweet, observant essence she'd had since she was a child. One Saturday afternoon, as a young adult, Alice was going through old boxes when she found a drawing, yellowed with time, 3 people holding hands. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, family. She showed it to Leo, who was on the couch listening to music. Do you remember this drawing? Leo smiled. How could I forget? It was the first one you ever gave me, and it's what made me believe there was still hope. I was 7. I didn't even really know what I was drawing. Yes, you did. You always knew. You saw it before anyone else. Alice sat down next to him. Are you happy, Dad? The word still warmed Leo's heart, even after all these years. Very. And you? Me too. She rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you. For what? For fighting, for not giving up, for proving that even when everything seems impossible, it's still worth trying. Leo hugged his daughter, feeling grateful for everything they had been through, for the pain that had shaped them, for the joys that had healed them, and especially for the love that had united them and that remained strong every single day, in every small gesture, in every sincere word, in every shared moment. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be, but it was real, it was true, and it was theirs. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Leo and Sarah has touched your hearts. If you were moved by this journey of overcoming obstacles, love, and family, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which part resonated with you the most. Was it the first meeting in the park, Sarah's courage in defending her dignity, or Leo's persistence in fighting for true love? Every day we bring you intense and engaging stories like this one, which reveal the deepest and most human side of relationships. Stories that make us believe that, even in the face of the most difficult obstacles, true love always finds a way. We'll see you in the next episode with more emotion, more drama, and more stories that will make you think about life and love.